Thank you, Fahd. So Yazid speaking. I will cover this part of the domain name system as a critical infrastructure. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I will say more technically speaking, because Fahd has already explained part of the DNS and its role. So the DNS, the domain name system, is actually this system which helps the internet, where you and I myself, and the servers, the devices which are actually connected to the world internet. The DNS as infrastructure is responsible to translate names into IP addresses. Okay, why? Because humans are more comfortable with names, while the infrastructure itself, the devices which are connected to the internet use what we call the IP address to identify each other. The devices which are connected to the internet use those internet protocol addresses. It's kind of like when you are in the telephonic network, in a mobile telephonic network, for instance, you have your MSISDN, which are the number on which you can be reached out. But what do you usually do? Number, you usually go into your phone book, you create a new contact, you put the number, and you assign a name. Of course, you can also assign several other parameters, like maybe his birthday, his email address, a second phone number, etc., etc. So your phone book actually helps you, helps you not being forced to keep each phone number in your head. So anytime you need to call someone, you just enter the phone book, you look for, initialize the call. But it is not the phone name which is actually used, it is the phone number assigned or associated to that name, which is actually triggered by the network. So coming back to the internet, as human, what do? We keep the names of those services, of those destinations, let's say a website, a bank services, an online bank service, etc., etc. So you open your browser and you just type in the name, but behind the scene, the name is not meaningful for the device. Your computer or your phone needs to actually identify the IP address which is associated to that name. It is a mandatory step for your device. And thanks to this DNS infrastructure, to this domain name system, it actually helps doing that translation from the name to the IP address. So let's try to see what is the content, what is the details of first is the database, because as I said, is the place where we actually match IP and names. So it's a database which is structured as an inverted tree, and you have the structure in the slide. So The entry point, the main entry point of this DNS tree is the dot, okay? And we call it the root. In the DNS jargon, we used to say the root or the dot, okay? It's the main entry point of the DNS actually. So this root itself, or every element within this infrastructure, is actually called a node, okay? So whatever you defined, of course, you cannot define anything at the same level as the root, so you have to go below, okay? And as soon as you get at the first stage below the root, immediately we call this stage the top level, okay? So all the nodes you create below the roots are called the top level nodes. And later on, it corresponds to what we call the top level domains, because each node is actually a domain, okay? So .tr, for instance, is defined immediately under the root, okay? .tr is a top level node, is a top level domain, okay? Now, we have two major categories of top level nodes. We have what we call the generic top level nodes, the country code top level domain you far well know about is your own country code top level domain, which is .tr, for instance. But there are several other country code top level domains which actually represent each country in the world. Generic top-level domains are also very well known. Some of them are, of course, historically well known, like .com, .org, .net, okay? But we also have other type of generic top-level domain like .paris, .africa, .academy, .lab, etc., etc. Okay. Under each top-level domains, we also have other domains. But remember, under the root, we talked about the top level. Okay. So under those top level, now we reach the second level. Okay. So under .tr, okay, we have plenty of domain names which are registered, which are created under the .tr. All those domain names will be called second level domain names, all located under the .tr. When you also look for .com, there are millions and millions of second level domains under the .com. It's the same with .net, it's the same with .org, etc., etc. Each of those second level nodes will also themselves have different type of nodes, and we'll see the case of Me Too, so your university domain name in the coming slides. So each of those nodes has a label, which is actually the name of the nodes, okay? And of course, I thought about .com. So .com is the name of the node representing com domain, okay? Later on, we discuss about the administration of those domains and how they are actually managed. Next slide, please. Okay. Thanks to two guys, Paul MOKAPETRIS and Jonathan POSTEL. We used to call him John POSTEL in 1998. Paul MOKAPETRIS is still around, and unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we are no longer having face-to-face meetings. Otherwise, he used to participate to meetings in the community. And those are the two guys who earlier in 80s started thinking about building a robust system which will actually serve the internet by translating the names into IP. They managed, which actually came up with the domain name system. Next slide, please. So let's go back to I will say the basics, and I will for that go to your company. Here we are talking about a university, and the most important components of your digital infrastructure is usually almost the same. You have the data on one side, whether it is internal data, the knowledge, and the processes you are using, the data you are generating, but also customer. It could be customer data, depending on your core business. The customers' data could vary. But you also have the infrastructure, which is actually supporting and serving this data. And when we talk about infrastructure, we are talking about the systems, the devices which are interconnected to actually provide the services. On one side, we have the network equipment, switches, routers, cables, Wi-Fi, etc., etc. But we also have the servers, the database servers, the mail servers, which actually work together to process the data, to show the data, to store the data, to forward the data, etc., etc. And of course, all this will not be feasible without the IP network itself. Okay, next slide.
I think Yazid is having a problem with his audio. Let's just give him some time. Yazid, you're currently muted.
Yes.
Okay, so welcome back.
I'm back. Sorry about that, my internet. Thank you. Unfortunately, and I apologize for this disturbance. I hope you can clearly hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So, like I was saying before, there is an infrastructure which actually helps the device provide the different services to process the data, to store the data, and to provide different services that users can easily consume. And of course, when we talk about IP network, Fahd has mentioned that before. We identify each network on the internet using its autonomous system number. So the ASN is actually an ID which help us on the internet to identify each network, and the network administrators usually configure this AS number and several other parameters, mainly the IP address prefixes, to actually announce their network to the internet. And of course, on the other hand, we have this domain name system. So we have the IP network on one side, and we have the domain name system on the other. Why this domain name system? Because it actually supports, if you remember, I was saying in the introduction that this domain name system actually translates names into IP addresses. And we have so many devices which are connected to the internet. How one can keep in mind the IP address of all those resources, all those servers, all those routers, all those database servers, etc., etc. It is just impossible. For one network, maybe kind of easy, but when you are talking about 50, 100 devices, yes, definitely it starts becoming challenging. And this DNS definitely will have its role to play, and this is the case. So both ecosystems are under constant attacks, just because there are people who understand that the network holds the data, and this data has become very important to some people. You are aware about those attacks where personal data are actually stolen, or any kind of data. There are some attacks where the attackers just want to get some sensitive emails. You have been aware about governmental well-developed countries. So I would say the attackers usually maybe are the only one who knows why he's conducting his attack. Okay, what is the reason he's actually preparing and performing his attack? And the networks must be aware of this risk of being attacked and prepare for that. And there are several ways for the attacker to actually conduct his attack. And today we will just have a kind of discussion around the domain name system. How should we secure the DNS to avoid attacks being conducted using the DNS vulnerabilities? Unfortunately, yes, DNS has several vulnerabilities, and we'll discuss them later. Next slide, please. So let's go a bit deep behind or in the DNS data. We said that the DNS is actually that infrastructure which help translate names into IPs. Let's see some concrete detail. I was mentioning about the top level domain before. So when it comes to Turkey, we are talking about the .tr, top level domain. And your university has actually registered a domain name under this .tr. Several CCTLDs have, and even some generic top level domains also have a way to actually classify domain names. So in Turkey, you have .edu, .tr, .com, .tr, etc., etc. The reason usually being that entity who is managing the CCTLD has identified this way of structuring the CCTLD. So all domains which are be registered under .edu.tr. And this is the case for your university. So METU has been registered under .edu.tr. And we can try to see what are the nodes under metu.edu.tr. You have a website, for instance, www.metu.edu.tr, which has an IP address, 144.122.145.153. You have mail server, at least one, mail.metu.edu.tr, which is located on 144.122.145.140 server. You have two name servers actually, which have both IPv4 and IPv6. That's very good. You have the 144.122.144.171 and .170, which responds to the names ns1.metu.edu.tr and ns2.metu.edu.tr. So what does it mean for the administrator of your domain? It makes it easy for him to just memorize the www.edu, the mail.metu, the ns1.metu, and ns2.metu. He doesn't need to always remind all those long IPs, mainly when it comes to memorize this. But the name is very simple. And for the whole internet users, it's very easy to memorize the web name, the website name of your university, www.metu, memorizing the complicated IP address, and it will be more complicated when you will host on an IPv6 server. So you can imagine how easy the DNS makes the usage of the internet. Without the DNS, it will be very complicated to actually use the internet. It will be very complicated for us to memorize all the IP addresses of the services we are using. We are using YouTube, we are using, we are paying online, we have several banks, we are maybe even paying citizen services that governments allow the citizens to actually use. There are so many services on the internet. And try just to imagine how feasible could it be if the DNS doesn't exist. Okay, next slide, please. Feel free to ask questions if you have, please. You can type in the chat, or you can maybe ask or announce that you have a question. So let us go through a quick quiz just to interact with you and get some input from you guys also. What are the main components of the DNS? Do you know about the components of the DNS? You have three suggestions here. Suggestion A, resolvers, authoritative name servers. Suggestion B, client and server. And option C, query response. Again, what are the main components of domain name system. We invite you to type in the chat the answer you may think about. So feel free to type A, B, or C in the chat, depending on what you think are the main components of the DNS. Can we use some 1 to 2 minutes? Okay. Some answers are coming. A. The majority is replying with option A. And you are actually right. Yes, the main components of the DNS are resolvers and authoritative name servers. And we'll see this in details in the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so before having the architecture of the DNS, let us go through this quick slide. The fundamental DNS components are, like you said, you replied, resolvers and name servers, okay? So the resolvers send queries, and they do not generate those queries themselves. The resolvers usually are located in the internet service provider premises, and they are configured to actually receive the queries from the users, from the customers, or from the ISP staff itself, or the company employees. Sorry. So all the devices you are using, let's say you are a customer of a mobile network operator in Turkey, there is a resolver, there is a recursive resolver which is configured on the ISP level to actually receive all the DNS queries coming from your mobile phone. Okay, you do not usually have to configure it yourself. It is already configured by the network. So what happened in your device is that there is a central, let's say a central application embedded in the operating system, which is called the tube resolver. This tube resolver will actually collect all the DNS queries coming from all your applications. Let's say your WhatsApp. Of course, WhatsApp is doing DNS. Of course, your Gmail is doing DNS. Of course, your YouTube is doing DNS. Of course, your Yahoo, your whatever you are using as application, which is installed in your mobile phone. Let's say it is an iOS or an Android. The applications themselves need to do DNS resolution to actually be in touch with the remote servers. But your operating system itself does a lot of DNS to actually maintain your device up and make you happy because you get all your notifications, you get all those emails on time, all those chats are delivered on time, etc., etc. So the tube resolver actually collects all the DNS queries on your device and discuss with the recursive resolver on the probably or on the ISP network to actually process those DNS queries. And those resolvers, again, they just send queries, and they send those queries to the name servers, which are called authoritative for domains. And those name servers, which are authoritative for domains, actually serve the answer for the domain, or they provide the answer for the domains they are serving. So a concrete example is whatever is a query you are asking for .com domain, it will go to .com authoritative name servers. .com authoritative name servers will look at .com database and will provide the answer. Okay, so all .com answers must come from the authoritative name servers configured to serve the .com zone. But later on, you will see that there are some techniques that are done to optimize this process. There is caching on one side, and the caching is actually configured on resolver's side. Because the resolvers receive a lot of queries, and for each of those queries, the resolver must go and fetch the answer on the authoritative name server side. When it receives the answer, it actually stores this answer into its cache. And of course, it gives the response to the initial person who sent the query. But it also caches a copy of, let's call it a copy of this answer. Why? Because someone else may ask the same question, may send the same DNS query, and why does he need to lose time and contact the authoritative name server again? This is not efficient. And instead of contacting the authoritative name server again, it will directly serve the answer from its cache. So it improves the performance and it reduces the response time. Okay. The second optimization is what we call the replication. And replication is usually performed on both sides, the resolvers and the name servers, just to make sure that not only one server is configured to do the job, but there are maybe 2, 3, or 4, or even more servers which are available to actually provide the service. It will help to reduce or to distribute the load, the total load, but it will also enhance the redundancy so that even if one server is unreachable or unavailable for any reason, the other servers can still continue providing the service. So in terms of resiliency, it is important to actually configure replication on your DNS infrastructure. On top-level domain sites, those entities I was referring to them earlier before, those entities which manage top-level domains and which are called registries, by the way, they manage those top-level domains following some specific rules. We want to go into the detail, but because the top-level domain is sensitive, is important, there is several kinds of processes and also matters that drive the way the top-level domain is actually consumed. But we won't go into the detail on that side. Just keep in mind that there should be a registration platform where people can easily go and register for domain names under this top-level domain. There should be a management platform. Again, the top-level domain is widely used, so it usually contains millions and millions of domains. and it requires a strong management platform for that. And of course, there should also be a billing platform to actually charge the registrants and the customers who come and register domain names under the top level domain. Next slide, please. So let us have a kind of overview of the DNS infrastructure. We have already described this before. You have your device on the left, which has its stub resolver, and you can see that the stub resolver is talking with the browser. Here it's a Safari browser, and the device is actually talking with the recursive name server. If you remember, the recursive name server is usually located at the internet service provider network. And this recursive resolver will actually talk with several authoritative name servers around the world, serving different top-level domains. And depending on the DNS query which has been sent to the recursive resolver, it will perform what we call a DNS resolution to actually get the answer. And this DNS resolution process is to go through the DNS namespace and get the answer. Okay, and of course, if you remember, the namespace process itself, the DNS resolution process, will start by querying the root. So in the normal case scenario, the recursive resolver will send a first query to one of the root servers, asking for the name, and the result, the root server will do what we call a redirection to a top level node. And from the top level node, there will probably be another redirection to the second level node. From the second level node, there could be a new redirection or provide. Here you are seeing a basic query of WhatsApp.com, which actually comes from the iPhone. I don't know which user it is, maybe me, maybe Paul, maybe someone else. But yes, the iPhone is asking for the IP address of WhatsApp.com. And when the recursive name server receives this query, it will initiate a new DNS query to the root server. Oh, root server, I need the IP address of WhatsApp.com. And the root server will actually reply by, okay, I do not have the IP address of WhatsApp.com, but let me redirect you to .com names, authoritative name servers. I'm pretty sure that .com will give you the answer. So the recursive now query one of .com authoritative name servers. Oh, .com, I need WhatsApp.com IP address. And here also .com will just say, oh, okay, I will redirect you to WhatsApp.com authoritative name server, and you can get the answer from there. So if you are looking for www.whatsapp.com, ask him. If you are asking for mail.whatsapp.com, etc., it will give you the answer. And finally, the recursive will go to a whatsapp.com authoritative name server and ask for its question. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. We have seen the DNS, we have seen its infrastructure, a very basic example. I'm pretty sure that some of you may have encountered this. Let us come back to the phone, your mobile phone case. You have a mobile phone, you have several contacts you have saved in your phone book, and you accidentally maybe, or someone else took your phone behind you and deleted some contacts in your phone book, or even changed the phone number of one of your contacts. What happened is that you don't know until the day you want to call the person, and you enter your phone book, look for the name, and you don't see it. Bad. Or you see the name, you call the name, but what happened is someone else which actually picks the call. So these are just examples of what could happen in the telephonic world. I will hand over to Paul, who will actually drive us through the attacks on the DNS. Paul, over to you.